Marcus Johnson was no stranger to hard work. Growing up in a small, weathered apartment on Chicago's South Side, he had learned early on that life wasn't going to hand him anything for free. His mother, Linda, worked tirelessly, 2 jobs, 6 days a week, to make sure there was always food on the table. She scrubbed floors at a downtown office during the day and spent her nights folding laundry at a nearby hotel. Despite their struggles, she always found time to remind Marcus of one thing. Don't let your circumstances define you. You've got potential, baby. Use it. And Marcus tried. Oh, how he tried. From the moment he could hold a broom, he helped out around the neighborhood, sweeping sidewalks for tips or running errands for neighbors too busy or too old to do it themselves. By the time he turned 16, he'd landed his first real job as a stock boy at the local grocery store. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to buy his mom a birthday cake once in a while, and that felt like success. But even with all his effort, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was stuck in a rut. The world outside his block seemed impossibly far away, a place filled with people who wore suits instead of uniforms, who drove cars instead of taking buses, who dreamed big dreams instead of just trying to survive another month. He wanted more, not just for himself, but for his mom. She deserved a break after everything she'd done for him. So Marcus made a plan. He enrolled in community college, squeezing classes into his schedule between shifts at the grocery store and odd jobs fixing bikes for kids in the park. Nights were long, mornings came too soon. But slowly, piece by piece, he started building something. A diploma here, a certification there. And then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, it happened, the Yahoo email that changed everything. It was from Vincent & Co., a marketing firm known for launching some of the biggest campaigns in the city. They were looking for someone to join their junior team, and somehow, against all odds, Marcus's application had caught their eye. The interview was set for Friday morning at 10 a.m., sharp. This was it, the chance he'd been waiting for. If he nailed this interview, he could finally step into that other world, the one he'd only seen through bus windows. The night before the interview, Marcus barely slept. He lay awake staring at the ceiling, rehearsing answers to questions he thought they might ask. What are your strengths? Your weaknesses? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? He didn't have fancy degrees or connections to lean on, but he knew one thing. He was determined. Determined to prove that he belonged, that he could hold his own alongside anyone else. When the alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., Marcus sprang out of bed like a sprinter at the starting line. He pulled on his only suit, a navy blue number that had belonged to his Uncle James before cancer took him, and stood in front of the cracked mirror in their tiny bathroom. Staring back at him was a young man with dark skin, tired eyes, and a heart full of hope. He straightened his tie, tucked his resume into a worn folder, and kissed his mom goodbye. "You're gonna knock 'em dead, baby," she said, giving him a quick hug. I know it. The journey to downtown Chicago was familiar yet nerve-wracking. 2 buses, each crowded with commuters scrolling through phones or staring blankly out the window. Marcus clutched the metal pole near the door, his knuckles white as he mentally reviewed his talking points. When he finally stepped off the second bus, the towering skyscrapers loomed above him, casting long shadows over the bustling streets. He checked his watch. 9:15. Plenty of time. As Marcus walked briskly toward Vincent & Co.'s office building, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement, he noticed something unusual up ahead. On the side of the road, a sleek silver car sat tilted awkwardly, its hazard lights blinking. A young woman stood beside it, crouched down and fiddling with a jack. Her blonde hair shimmered under the morning sun, and her tailored blazer suggested she was heading somewhere important. But right now she looked frustrated, muttering under her breath as she struggled to change the flat tire. Marcus hesitated. He knew he should keep moving. He couldn't afford to be late. But something about the scene tugged at him. Maybe it was the way her shoulders slumped, defeated. Or maybe it was the memory of his mom teaching him to always lend a hand when someone needed help. Whatever it was, he couldn't walk away. "Excuse me," he called out, approaching cautiously. "Do you need a hand with that?" The woman looked up, startled. then visibly relaxed. "Oh, thank goodness," she said, standing up and brushing her hands on her slacks. "I've never changed a tire before. I don't even know if I'm doing this right." "No worries," Marcus replied with a reassuring smile. "Let me take care of it for you." He set to work quickly, his movements efficient and practiced. Years of tinkering with bikes and helping neighbors had taught him the basics of car maintenance. As he loosened the lug nuts and jacked up the car, the woman hovered nearby, watching intently. "You're really good at this," she remarked after a moment. "Are you like a mechanic or something?" Marcus chuckled softly. "Not exactly. Just picked up a few things along the way." "I'm Evelyn, by the way," she added, extending her hand. "Marcus," he said, shaking it briefly before returning to the task. "So, where you headed? Looks like you're dressed for something important." Evelyn sighed, glancing at her watch. "Yeah, I've got a meeting across town. Big presentation, and now thanks to this flat I'm probably going to be late." Marcus nodded sympathetically. He understood the pressure of being on time for something crucial. Still, he pushed the thought aside and focused on finishing the job. Within 10 minutes, the spare tire was securely in place. "There you go," he said, standing up and wiping his hands on a rag he'd found in the trunk. "Should get you where you need to go." Evelyn beamed at him, relief washing over her face. "Thank you so much, Marcus. Seriously, I don't know what I would have done without your help." "It's no problem," he replied modestly. "Just glad I could help." She reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. "Here, please, let me give you something for your trouble." Marcus shook his head firmly. "No, ma'am. That's not necessary. Just pay it forward someday, okay?" Evelyn stared at him for a moment, clearly taken aback by his kindness. Then she smiled again, softer this time. "You've got a good heart, Marcus. Don't ever lose that." With a final wave, she climbed back into her car and drove off, leaving Marcus standing on the curb. He glanced at his watch and froze. 9:50. Panic surged through him as he realized he was cutting it dangerously close. Breaking into a jog, he hurried toward the office building, praying he wouldn't be too late. By the time Marcus reached the towering glass doors of Vincent & Co., his heart was pounding like a drum. He darted through the lobby, dodging clusters of well-dressed professionals chatting over coffee. The receptionist, a poised woman with a headset perched on her ear, gave him a polite but skeptical look as he approached. "Hi, I'm here for an interview," Marcus panted, trying to catch his breath. "Marcus Johnson. It's scheduled for 10 o'clock. The receptionist glanced at her computer screen, tapping a few keys before shaking her head slightly. "I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, but the interviewer left about 10 minutes ago. They assumed you weren't coming when you didn't arrive on time." Marcus felt as though someone had punched him in the gut. All that preparation, all those sleepless nights, and now this. His chance, the one opportunity he'd been clinging to, had slipped through his fingers because he stopped to help a stranger. I can explain," he stammered, desperation creeping into his voice. "There was an accident on the road. A woman needed help and—" "I understand," the receptionist interrupted gently, though her tone carried a note of finality. "But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. You'll have to contact HR if you'd like to reschedule." Reschedule? Marcus thought bitterly. Would they even give him another shot after showing up late? He muttered a quiet thank you and trudged back outside, feeling the weight of failure settle heavily on his shoulders. As he walked, Marcus replayed the morning's events in his mind. Helping Evelyn had felt like the right thing to do at the time, but now doubt crept in. Had he made the wrong choice? Should he have ignored her and prioritized his own future instead? The questions swirled endlessly, leaving him more frustrated than ever. He decided to take the long way home, needing some space to clear his head. The streets were alive with activity. Vendors shouting their wares, children chasing each other, across playgrounds and cars honking impatiently in traffic. Normally, these sights would remind Marcus of the resilience of his community, but today they only amplified his sense of isolation. Everyone else seemed to be moving forward while he was stuck in place. When he finally arrived at his apartment, his mother was waiting for him. Linda could read her son's expressions better than anyone, and the moment she saw his slumped posture and defeated eyes, she knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked softly, setting aside the dish towel she'd been holding. Marcus flopped onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. "I blew it, Mom. The interview, I missed it because I stopped to help someone on the road. Now they won't even talk to me again." Linda sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Tell me what happened." So Marcus recounted the story, the flat tire, the woman in the silver car, the rush to get to the office, and the crushing disappointment of finding out he was too late. As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes, not just from frustration but also from the overwhelming sense of unfairness. Why did doing the right thing always seem to come at such a high cost? His mother listened patiently, nodding occasionally. When he finished, she leaned back and looked at him thoughtfully. "You did the right thing, Marcus. That woman needed help, and you gave it to her without expecting anything in return. That says more about your character than any resume ever could. But it doesn't pay the bills, Mom," Marcus replied bitterly. "It doesn't put food on the table or keep the lights on." "No, it doesn't," Linda admitted. "But sometimes life rewards us in ways we don't expect. You may not see it now, but trust me, your kindness will come back around." Marcus wanted to believe her, but it was hard. For years, he'd seen how the world worked. People who helped others often got taken advantage of, while those who looked out for themselves climbed higher and faster. Still, he nodded silently, unwilling to argue with the woman who had sacrificed so much for him. Meanwhile, miles away in a sleek conference room overlooking the Chicago skyline, Evelyn Carter prepared for her big presentation. As the CEO of Carter Enterprises, a multi-billion-dollar tech startup, Evelyn was accustomed to commanding attention. Her sharp suits, confident demeanor, and razor-sharp intellect had earned her respect in an industry dominated by men. But today, her thoughts kept drifting back to the young man she'd met earlier. She couldn't shake the image of Marcus crouched beside her car, calmly working to fix her flat tire, despite clearly having somewhere important to be. There had been no hesitation, no expectation of reward, just pure, unselfish kindness. In a city where everyone seemed to be hustling for their next win, his actions stood out like a beacon. Evelyn had tried to offer him money, but he'd refused, simply asking her to pay it forward someday. Those words lingered in her mind, long after they parted ways. They reminded her of her father, a man who had built their family business from scratch and always emphasized the importance of integrity and compassion. After the meeting, which went off without a hitch, Evelyn returned to her office, still thinking about Marcus. Something about him intrigued her. Perhaps it was his humility, or maybe it was the quiet determination she'd glimpsed in his eyes. Whatever it was, she found herself wondering what kind of person he really was. And then it hit her. What if she could find out? She called her assistant Rachel into the room. "Do me a favor," Evelyn said, leaning back in her chair. "See if you can track down information on someone named Marcus Johnson. He helped me change a tire this morning. Tall, African-American, early 20s. If you need more details, let me know." Rachel raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. She was used to Evelyn's unconventional requests. "Will do," she said, jotting down notes before heading out. Later that evening, Evelyn reviewed the information Rachel had gathered. It turned out Marcus wasn't just any passerby. He was a college graduate juggling odd jobs to support his family, and he'd recently applied for a position at Vincent & Co. The pieces clicked into place. The suit, the nervous energy, the urgency in his voice when he'd mentioned being late. He hadn't just been helping her. He'd been sacrificing his own opportunity to do so. Evelyn sat back in her chair, deep in thought. She admired Marcus's selflessness, but she also felt a pang of guilt. If she hadn't needed help, he might have made it to his interview on time. Was there a way to make things right? More importantly, was there a way to turn this unfortunate situation into something positive for both Marcus and her company? Her mind began racing with possibilities. Carter Enterprises prided itself on innovation, not just in technology but also in its approach to social responsibility. What if they created a role specifically designed to bridge the gap between corporate success and community impact? Someone like Marcus, someone who understood struggle and resilience firsthand, could bring invaluable perspective to such an initiative. Excited by the idea, Evelyn grabbed her phone and sent a quick email to HR. "Let's explore creating a new position within the Social Impact Division," she wrote. "I'll provide more details soon, but start drafting a job description focused on leadership, empathy, and grassroots engagement." Then, with a small smile, she picked up her phone and dialed a number Rachel had provided. After a brief conversation with the receptionist at Vincent & Co., Evelyn confirmed that Marcus's interview had indeed fallen through due to tardiness. Satisfied that she had all the facts, she resolved to reach out to him personally. For Evelyn, this wasn't just about rectifying a mistake. It was about recognizing potential where others might overlook it. In Marcus's act of kindness, she saw qualities that were rare and valuable: integrity, humility, and a genuine desire to make a difference. These were traits that couldn't be taught in a classroom or measured on a resume. And as the CEO of a company striving to lead with purpose, Evelyn knew exactly what to do next. Little did Marcus realize that the simple decision to stop and help a stranger on the side of the road was about to set off a chain reaction, one that would change the course of his life forever. The days that followed the missed interview were some of the hardest Marcus had ever faced. He tried to keep busy, throwing himself into his part-time job at the diner and picking up extra hours wherever he could. But no matter how much he worked, the disappointment lingered like a shadow, following him everywhere he went. Every time he served a customer or wiped down a table, his mind drifted back to that morning, the flat tire, Evelyn's grateful smile, and the crushing moment when he realized he'd been too late for the interview. At night, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every detail in his head. Had he made the wrong choice? Should he have ignored Evelyn and focused on his own future instead? The questions gnawed at him, leaving him restless and frustrated. For all his efforts to do the right thing, it felt like the universe was punishing him for it. His mother noticed the change in him almost immediately. Linda wasn't one to pry, but she knew her son well enough to see when something was weighing on him. One evening, after closing up the diner where Marcus worked, she joined him at their small kitchen table with 2 steaming cups of tea. "You've been quiet lately," she said gently, sliding one of the cups toward him. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Marcus sighed, running a hand over his face. "And I can't stop thinking about what happened, Mom. About how close I was to getting my foot in the door and then blowing it because I stopped to help someone." Linda nodded thoughtfully, sipping her tea before responding. "Helping others is never a mistake, Marcus. You did the right thing. Sometimes, though, doing the right thing doesn't give us the reward we expect right away. That doesn't mean there isn't one coming." "I hope you're right," Marcus muttered, though his tone suggested he didn't fully believe her. "It just feels like everything I try gets taken away from me." Before Linda could respond, his phone buzzed loudly on the table. Both of them glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. Marcus hesitated for a moment, then picked it up. "Hello?" he answered cautiously. "Hi, may I speak to Marcus Johnson?" came a crisp, professional voice on the other end. "This is Marcus," he replied, sitting up straighter. Calls from unknown numbers usually meant telemarketers or scam attempts, but something about this one felt different. "Mr. Johnson, this is Evelyn Carter. We met briefly last week. On the side of the road? You helped me with a flat tire." For a split second, Marcus froze. Evelyn Carter. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. Then it hit him. The woman in the silver car, the one he'd helped despite knowing he was running late for his interview. His eyes widened as realization dawned. "Oh, yes, Miss Carter," he stammered, suddenly feeling self-conscious. "How are you?" "I'm doing well, thank you," Evelyn replied warmly. "Listen, Marcus, I wanted to reach out because I feel terrible about what happened. I learned that you missed an important interview because of me, and I want to apologize. Marcus blinked, caught off guard by her words. You know about that? Yes, Evelyn admitted. I did some digging after our encounter and I found out what happened. First, let me say how sorry I am for causing you to miss such a crucial opportunity. It must have been incredibly frustrating. It's okay, Marcus said quickly, though his voice betrayed a hint of bitterness. These things happen. Well, regardless, I'd like to make it right, Evelyn continued. Would you be open to meeting with me tomorrow? There might be another opportunity worth discussing, one that aligns with your skills and values. Marcus's heart skipped a beat. Another opportunity? With Evelyn Carter, no less? It sounded too good to be true. Still, he couldn't pass up the chance, however slim it might be. I'd love to, he managed, trying to sound calm despite the storm of emotions swirling inside him. Thank you so much for reaching out. Wonderful, Evelyn said, her tone brightening. I'll text you the address of my office. Be here at 10 a.m. and we'll talk more then. After hanging up, Marcus stared at his phone in stunned silence. His mother, who had been listening intently, leaned forward with wide eyes. Who was that? She asked eagerly. It was the woman I helped, Marcus explained, still processing the conversation. She's offering me another chance, an opportunity to meet with her tomorrow. Linda's face lit up with excitement. See? What did I tell you? Doing the right thing always pays off, even if it takes a little longer than expected. The yow. Next morning, Marcus woke up before sunrise, unable to sleep. He spent nearly an hour ironing his suit, making sure it looked as polished as possible. After carefully reviewing his resume and practicing answers to potential questions, he left the house early, determined not to be late this time. When he arrived at the address Evelyn had sent him, a gleaming skyscraper downtown, he felt a mix of awe and intimidation. The building was unlike anything he'd ever seen up close, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun like a beacon of success. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by a sleek lobby filled with marble floors, abstract, art, and employees buzzing around with purpose. At the front desk, a receptionist greeted him with a friendly smile. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. Ms. Carter is expecting you. Please take a seat and she'll be with you shortly. Marcus nodded, perching nervously on the edge of a plush leather chair. He flipped through a magazine to distract himself, though his mind kept racing. Who exactly was Evelyn Carter? Why had she gone out of her way to track him down? And most importantly, what kind of opportunity was she offering? After a few minutes, a tall man in a sharp suit appeared and introduced himself as Rachel's assistant. Ms. Carter will see you now, he said, gesturing toward a private elevator. As the doors slid shut behind him, Marcus felt his nerves kick into overdrive. The elevator ride seemed to last forever, each ding of the passing floors amplifying his anxiety. When the doors finally opened, he stepped into a breathtaking office space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. Evelyn stood waiting for him, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and heels. She extended her hand with a warm smile. Marcus, thank you for coming. Please come in. She led him to a conference room where a spread of coffee, pastries, and fruit awaited them. Despite his nerves, Marcus couldn't help but notice how welcoming and genuine Evelyn seemed. This wasn't the cold, corporate environment he'd imagined. It felt personal, almost intimate. First, let me say again how sorry I am for causing you to miss your interview, Evelyn began once they were seated. I truly admire what you did for me that day. Not many people would have stopped to help a stranger, especially when they had somewhere important to be. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It was nothing, really. I just figured anyone else would have done the same. But they wouldn't have, Evelyn countered firmly. That's why it stood out to me. Your kindness reminded me of my father. He used to say that character shines brightest during moments of sacrifice, and yours certainly shone that day. Her words caught Marcus off guard, filling him with a strange mix of pride and humility. No one had ever spoken to him like that before, not in the way Evelyn did. treating him as an equal rather than someone beneath her. So, Evelyn continued, leaning forward slightly, let me tell you why I asked you here. At Carter Enterprises, we're launching a new initiative called the Social Impact Division. Our goal is to use our resources and influence to create meaningful change in underserved communities. But to do that effectively, we need leaders who understand those challenges firsthand, people who've lived them. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. When I learned about your background and the work you've done in your community, I knew you'd be perfect for this role. It's not just about qualifications, it's about perspective. Someone like you could bring authenticity and insight to this project in ways no one else could. Marcus listened intently, his heart pounding. Was this real? Was Evelyn seriously offering him a position based on the very struggles he'd always seen as obstacles? What would the job involve? He asked cautiously, wanting to make sure he understood. Evelyn smiled. You'd lead grassroots initiatives, working directly with local organizations to design programs that address systemic issues like education, employment, and housing. Think of it as bridging the gap between big ideas and real-world impact. Of course, there'll be training and support along the way, but ultimately, this role is about empowering you to make a difference. Marcus sat back, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she was proposing. For years, he'd dreamed of escaping poverty, not just for himself, but for everyone stuck in similar circumstances. And now, Evelyn was handing him the tools to actually make that dream a reality. I don't know what to say, he admitted, his voice trembling slightly. This is more than I ever imagined. There's no rush to decide, Evelyn assured him. Take some time to think it over, but I hope you'll consider joining us. Together we can build something extraordinary. As Marcus left the office later that day, his mind was a whirlwind of emotions. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered within him, a tiny spark that promised brighter days ahead. Little did he realize, this was only the beginning of a journey that would transform not just his life, but countless others as well. The days following Evelyn's offer were a blur for Marcus. He replayed their conversation in his mind over and over, trying to make sense of it all. Was this real? Could someone like him, a young man from the South Side who had spent most of his life hustling just to get by, really step into a role at one of Chicago's most prestigious companies? The idea felt surreal, almost too good to be true. But as he thought about it more, Marcus realized that Evelyn wasn't offering him charity. She saw something in him, something valuable, and she believed he could rise to the occasion. That belief was intoxicating. It made him want to prove her right, to show her and himself that he was capable of far more than anyone had ever expected. When Marcus finally accepted the job, Evelyn wasted no time getting him started. Within a week, he found himself sitting in an orientation session with members of Carter Enterprises' leadership team. They walked him through the company's mission, values, and goals, emphasizing how the Social Impact Division fit into the larger picture. For Marcus, it was both exciting and overwhelming. These were people who spoke confidently about budgets, strategies, and partnerships, concepts he'd only read about in textbooks or seen on TV. Yet, despite feeling out of his depth, Marcus couldn't help but feel inspired. This was his chance to turn everything he'd learned growing up into something meaningful. Evelyn became not just his boss, but also his mentor. From day one, she made it clear that she wanted Marcus to succeed, not because she pitied him, but because she genuinely believed in his potential. She scheduled regular check-ins with him, asking thoughtful questions and offering guidance without making him feel small. You're here because you have something unique to contribute, she told him during one of their early meetings. Don't lose sight of that. At first, Marcus struggled to adjust to the corporate world. Everything moved so fast, and the jargon often left him confused. But Evelyn encouraged him to ask questions, reminding him that everyone starts somewhere. Slowly, but surely, he began finding his footing. He immersed himself in research, learning everything he could about community development, policy reform, and sustainable practices. He shadowed senior employees, observing how they navigated meetings and negotiated deals. And when given the opportunity, He shared insights from his own experiences, offering perspectives that even seasoned professionals hadn't considered. One of Marcus's earliest assignments was to draft a proposal for a pilot program aimed at providing job training and placement services for underserved youth. It was a daunting task, especially since he'd never written anything like it before, but Evelyn reassured him, saying, "Just tell your story. Let your voice guide the work." So Marcus poured his heart into the project. He drew inspiration from his own struggles, the long hours working odd jobs, the frustration of being overlooked, the determination to create a better future. He interviewed local leaders, gathered data, and collaborated with nonprofit organizations already doing similar work. By the time he presented his proposal to Evelyn and the executive board, he felt nervous but proud. This wasn't just a document, it was a piece of him. To his astonishment, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The executives praised his creativity, passion, and attention to detail. One of them even remarked, "This is exactly why we hired you, Marcus. You bring authenticity to the table, something we desperately need." For Marcus, that moment was transformative. It wasn't just validation of his hard work, it was proof that he belonged. He wasn't an outsider looking in anymore. He was part of the team, contributing in ways that mattered. As weeks turned into months, Marcus threw himself into his new role with relentless energy. Under Evelyn's guidance, he launched several initiatives designed to uplift struggling communities. One of his proudest accomplishments was a partnership with a local high school to create a mentorship program connecting students with professionals in various fields. The program quickly gained traction, earning praise from teachers, parents, and participants alike. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were challenges, moments when funding fell short, stakeholders disagreed, or progress seemed painfully slow. During those times, Evelyn was there to remind him of the bigger picture. "Change takes time," she would say. "Don't let setbacks discourage you. Keep pushing forward." And push forward he did. With each success, Marcus grew more confident in his abilities. He started speaking at conferences, sharing his journey and advocating for systemic change. People listened, not just because of what he said, but because of how he said it. He spoke with conviction, authenticity, and hope, qualities that resonated deeply with audiences. Through it all, Marcus never forgot where he came from. Every paycheck he received went toward helping his mom pay off bills and improve their living conditions. On weekends, he returned to his old neighborhood, volunteering at community centers and mentoring kids who reminded him of his younger self. He wanted them to know that no matter how tough things got, they could still dream big and achieve even bigger. Meanwhile, Evelyn watched Marcus's growth with pride. She had always known he had potential, but seeing him thrive exceeded her expectations. What started as a gesture of gratitude, an attempt to make amends for costing him an interview, had blossomed into something extraordinary. Marcus wasn't just excelling in his role. He was redefining what leadership looked like within the company. Their relationship evolved beyond mentor and mentee. Evelyn often sought Marcus's input on decisions, valuing his perspective as much as any other executives. In turn, Marcus admired Evelyn not just as a powerful CEO, but as a person who genuinely cared about making the world a better place. They formed a bond built on mutual respect and trust, one that transcended titles and backgrounds. By the end of his first year at Carter Enterprises, Marcus had become a cornerstone of the Social Impact Division. His programs were thriving, and his influence extended far beyond the office walls. Yet, despite his achievements, he remained humble, always crediting his success to the support of others, his mother, Evelyn, and the countless individuals who had inspired him along the way. Looking back, Marcus realized that helping Evelyn on the side of the road hadn't been a detour after all. It had been the turning point of his life, a moment that set him on a path he never could have imagined. And as he stood on stage later that year, accepting an award for his contributions to the community, he knew one thing for certain: kindness, no matter how small, has the power to change lives, including your own. A year had passed since Marcus first stepped into Carter Enterprises, and the transformation in his life was nothing short of extraordinary. The young man who once hustled to make ends meet was now standing tall as a leader within one of Chicago's most influential companies. His work with the Social Impact Division had not only earned him recognition, but also reignited his belief in the power of community and resilience. The gala that evening was unlike anything Marcus had ever attended. Held at a luxurious downtown ballroom, the event brought together business leaders, philanthropists, and activists from across the city. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, casting warm light over elegantly dressed guests mingling beneath them. Waiters glided through the crowd, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. For someone like Marcus, who still thought of himself as just a kid from the South Side, the scene felt almost surreal. But tonight wasn't just another networking event. It was an award ceremony honoring individuals who had made significant contributions to social change. And Marcus Johnson was one of the recipients. As he adjusted his tie for what felt like the 100th time, Evelyn approached him with a reassuring smile. She looked stunning in a deep emerald gown, her presence commanding yet warm. "Nervous?" she asked, handing him a glass of sparkling water. "A little," Marcus admitted, chuckling nervously. "I'm used to being behind the scenes, not center stage." "Well, get ready," Evelyn said with a playful grin. "Because you've earned this moment, Marcus. Every single person here needs to hear your story." Before he could respond, the lights dimmed, signaling the start of the program. A host took the stage, welcoming everyone and briefly outlining the purpose of the evening. One by one, award recipients were called forward to accept their honors. Each speech was inspiring, filled with stories of perseverance, innovation, and impact. But when the host announced Marcus's name, the room seemed to buzz with anticipation. "Next, we honor Marcus Johnson," the host began, his voice booming through the speakers. A true testament to the power of determination and compassion, Marcus has dedicated his career to uplifting underserved communities. Through his groundbreaking initiatives at Carter Enterprises, he has created pathways to opportunity for countless individuals. Please join me in congratulating Marcus as this year's recipient of the Community Leadership Award. Applause erupted throughout the ballroom as Marcus made his way to the stage. Cameras flashed, capturing every step. He climbed the stairs, slowly, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes watching him. When he reached the podium, he paused to take a deep breath, gripping the edges of the lectern for support. The spotlight was blinding, but as he scanned the crowd, he spotted familiar faces. His mother beaming with pride, Evelyn giving him an encouraging nod, and even a few former classmates from community college who had come to celebrate his success. "Thank you," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the nerves swirling inside him. Honestly, this is overwhelming. I never imagined I'd be standing here tonight, especially given where I started." He went on to share his story, the struggles of growing up in poverty, the sacrifices his mother made to keep their family afloat, and the countless jobs he worked just to survive. He spoke candidly about the morning he helped Evelyn change her flat tire, unaware of how that act of kindness would alter the course of his life. "That day taught me something important," Marcus continued, his tone softening. "Sometimes, doing the right thing doesn't give you immediate rewards. In fact, it might cost you something valuable. In my case, a job interview I'd been dreaming about for years. But if I've learned anything over the past year, it's that kindness has a way of coming back around. It connects us in ways we can't predict and opens doors we didn't even know existed." The audience listened intently, captivated by his words. Many nodded in agreement, while others wiped away tears. Marcus then turned his focus to the work he'd done at Carter Enterprises, crediting his team and the communities they served for their collaboration and trust. "I didn't do this alone," he emphasized. "Every program, every initiative, it's been a collective effort. My role has simply been to listen, to amplify voices that are too often ignored, and to remind people that they have value, because everyone deserves a chance to succeed no matter where they come from." Finally, Marcus addressed Evelyn directly, his gratitude evident in every word. "Evelyn, I want to thank you, not just for giving me this opportunity, but for believing in me when I didn't fully believe in myself. You saw potential in me that I couldn't see, and you gave me the tools to turn that potential into action. For that, I'll always be grateful." When he finished speaking, the room erupted into applause once again. This time, however, it felt different, more personal, more heartfelt. As Marcus returned to his seat, Evelyn leaned over and whispered, "You were amazing up there." "Thanks to you," Marcus replied softly, his eyes glistening with emotion. After the formal program ended, guests moved to the reception area where conversations flowed freely over dessert and coffee. Marcus found himself surrounded by well-wishers, some eager to shake his hand, others wanting to learn more about his initiatives. It was humbling, but also invigorating. For so long he'd felt invisible, like his efforts didn't matter. Now he realized they did, and not just to those he helped, but to the wider world. Later that evening, as the gala wound down, Marcus stepped outside for some fresh air. The cool night breeze was a welcome contrast to the warmth of the crowded ball. As Marcus stood outside the ballroom breathing in the crisp night air, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come. The city's skyline stretched out before him, its lights twinkling like stars against the dark canvas of the sky. It was a view that once felt distant and unattainable, a world reserved for people who didn't look like him or come from where he did. But now, standing there in his tailored suit with an award tucked under his arm, Marcus realized something profound. He belonged here, not because of luck or privilege, but because of hard work, determination, and the kindness of strangers, especially Evelyn. The sound of footsteps behind him pulled him from his thoughts. Turning, he saw Evelyn approaching, her emerald gown shimmering faintly in the glow of the streetlights. She smiled warmly as she joined him by the railing. "Enjoying the view?" she asked, leaning casually against the metal barrier. "It's beautiful," Marcus replied, his gaze sweeping across the horizon. "But honestly, it feels surreal. A year ago, I never would have imagined being here, doing what I'm doing, surrounded by people like this." Evelyn nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes life takes us places we don't expect. All it takes is one decision, one moment of courage, to set everything in motion." Marcus turned to look at her, gratitude swelling in his chest. "I owe so much of this to you, Evelyn. If you hadn't reached out after that day on the road, I don't know where I'd be right now." "You owe it to yourself," Evelyn corrected gently. "I just gave you the opportunity. You're the one who seized it and ran with it. What you've accomplished in such a short time is incredible, Marcus. You should be proud." He smiled, softly, shaking his head slightly. "It's still hard to believe sometimes. Growing up, I always thought success was about money or titles. But now I see it differently. Success is about impact. It's about making a difference. Not just for yourself, but for others." Evelyn's eyes softened as she listened. "That's exactly why I knew you were perfect for this role. You understand what truly matters. Too many people get caught up in chasing personal gain without realizing that true fulfillment comes from lifting others up." They stood in comfortable silence for a few moments, taking in the quiet beauty of the night. Then Evelyn spoke again, her tone lighter this time. "So, what's next for you? Any big dreams you want to tackle?" Marcus chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Honestly, I haven't had much time to think about it. There's still so much work to do with the social impact division, but I guess my dream is to keep expanding our reach, to show people in communities like mine that they have value, that their voices matter, and maybe someday inspire someone else the way you've inspired me." Evelyn beamed at him, clearly moved by his words. "You already are inspiring people, Marcus. Every program you launch, every speech you give, it's planting seeds. Seeds that will grow into something bigger than either of us can imagine." In the months that followed, Marcus continued to pour his energy into his work. Under his leadership, the Social Impact Division flourished, launching new initiatives and forming partnerships with organizations across the country. One of his proudest achievements was the creation of a national mentorship network, connecting young people from underserved backgrounds with professionals in various industries. The program quickly gained traction, earning praise from educators, policymakers, and participants alike. But Marcus didn't stop there. He also began advocating for systemic change, using his platform to speak out about issues like education reform, affordable housing, and economic inequality. His speeches resonated deeply with audiences, not because he delivered them with polished rhetoric, but because they came from a place of authenticity. When Marcus talked about struggle, resilience, and hope, people listened, not just because of his words, but because of the life experiences that shaped them. Through it all, Evelyn remained a constant source of support. Their relationship evolved beyond mentor and mentee. They became close friends, often brainstorming ideas together and challenging each other to think bigger. Evelyn admired Marcus's ability to connect with people on a human level, while Marcus respected Evelyn's unwavering commitment to integrity and purpose. Together, they formed a partnership that exemplified the best of what leadership could be. One evening, as they sat in Evelyn's office discussing future projects, Marcus brought up a question that had been weighing on his mind. "What made you take a chance on me?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. "I mean, when you tracked me down after that flat tire, you barely knew me. Why did you believe in me so much?" Evelyn leaned back in her chair, considering the question carefully. "It wasn't just about the tire, Marcus. It was about the kind of person you showed yourself to be in that moment. You didn't hesitate to help me, even though you were running late for something important. That told me everything I needed to know about your character." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "Too often we judge people based on where they come from or what's on their resume, but real potential, the kind that changes lives, isn't always visible on paper. I saw it in you, Marcus, and I knew that if anyone could bridge the gap between corporate success and community impact, it was you." Her words hit Marcus like a wave, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. He realized that Evelyn's faith in him wasn't just a gift, it was a responsibility to continue proving her right, not just for himself, but for everyone counting on him to make a difference. Years later, when Marcus looked back on his journey, he marveled at how one seemingly small act of kindness had set off a chain reaction. Helping Evelyn on the side of the road hadn't just changed his life, it had created ripples that touched countless others. Through his work, he had helped thousands of individuals break free from cycles of poverty, giving them the tools and opportunities they needed to build brighter futures. And yet, despite all his accomplishments, Marcus never lost sight of where he came from. He returned to his old neighborhood regularly, mentoring kids and volunteering at community centers. He wanted them to know that no matter how tough things got, they could still dream big and achieve even bigger. On one such visit, a young boy approached him shyly, holding out a drawing he'd made. In bold colors, the picture depicted a tall man in a suit standing beside a crowd of smiling faces. "This is you," the boy said proudly. "You help people." Marcus knelt down, meeting the child's gaze. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And remember, you can help people too. No matter how old you are, no matter where you're from, your actions matter." As he walked away, Marcus glanced at the drawing one more time. It reminded him of his own journey, the struggles, the sacrifices, and the moments of grace that had led him here. Life was unpredictable, full of twists and turns that couldn't always be anticipated. But one thing was certain: kindness, no matter how small, had the power to change lives, including your own. And as Marcus disappeared into the bustling streets of Chicago, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, he carried that truth with him, a reminder that even in a world filled with uncertainty, compassion could light the way forward.